Have you ever noticed that the very thing that once made you feel special has now become the very weight that drags you down? Think about it. When you were young, people told you that you were different, that you were destined for more, that your mind was sharper, quicker, brighter than the rest. And for a while, you believed it. You walked through life with the strange confidence of someone who thought the world would eventually bend to their talent. But here's the paradox. The praise that lifted you as a child has become the chain that holds you as an adult. What once felt like a crown now feels like a cage. You wake up and wonder, why do I feel stuck? Why do I feel disconnected, like I'm watching life unfold from a distance, while everyone else seems to be living inside it? This is not failure. It's not laziness. It's not weakness. It is something far more subtle and far more dangerous. It is the quiet decay of building your entire identity around being the smart one. And here lies the uncomfortable truth. Intelligence, without transformation, becomes a prison. What once made you different has now isolated you. What once gave you belonging has now left you standing on the edges of every room, unable to step. The question, then, is this. How do you break free from the image you've been forced to worship? How do you step down from the pedestal without collapsing into despair? Because here's the reality. Your life is not waiting for you to be brilliant. Your life is waiting for you to be whole. The tragedy of many gifted children is not that they lacked opportunities, but that they were consumed by a single story about themselves. From the earliest years, they were told, "You are smart, you are special, you are ahead." And while those words seemed like blessings, they were in fact subtle curses. Because when you are praised not for effort but for ease, not for persistence but for talent, you learn something poisonous. If I am truly intelligent, life should not be difficult, and so every challenge becomes more than a challenge. It becomes a threat. Every failure becomes a humiliation. Every moment of confusion becomes proof that maybe you are not who you thought you were. And so to protect the fragile image, you begin to shrink. You avoid the game you might lose. You avoid the subject that confuses you. You avoid the relationship that might expose your vulnerability. You step back again and again until your life becomes a narrow corridor of things you already know you can do well. But here is the cruel twist. What begins as protection soon turns into suffocation. While others experiment, stumble, laugh at their mistakes, and grow, you remain still. While they form bonds through shared struggle and imperfection, you stand apart, perfect, but empty. And over time, this perfection becomes a mask that suffocates you. On the outside, you still look capable, sharp, composed. But inside, there is a slow burning panic. You know that you have built your worth on a foundation that cannot hold. This is why so many intelligent people feel like strangers in their own lives. They confuse survival with success. They confuse avoidance with mastery. They confuse isolation with superiority. And the result is the same, an endless ache of disconnection. The problem is not that you are not intelligent enough. The problem is that you have allowed intelligence to replace identity, to replace humanity itself. And the longer you cling to it, the more hollow you become. This is the disease of brilliance without depth. The soul starves while the mind shines. Carl once wrote, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents." But in truth, the burden is larger than that. The greatest weight we carry is the unlived life within ourselves, the parts of us we sacrifice to maintain an image. When a child is told, "You are intelligent," they do not only hear praise, they hear a command. Be what we see you as. Do not fail. Do not stumble. Do not contradict the image we have built for you. And so, little by little, the child learns not to live, but to perform. Nietzsche called it the spirit of gravity, that invisible force that drags us down whenever we try to rise, whispering that we must remain within the chains of expectation. The weight of being smart becomes precisely that, a chain disguised as a crown. And this is why the intelligent often suffer more deeply than anyone expects. For intelligence sharpens awareness, but it does not guarantee courage. It allows you to see your prison in detail, but not necessarily to break free from it. Jung warned that what we repress in childhood does not vanish. It festers in the shadows of the psyche. And so the gifted child often becomes the anxious adult, the perfectionist who cannot rest, the lonely thinker who confuses analysis with life itself. The mind shines, yes, but the soul remains unfed. How many mornings have you woken up already exhausted, not from work, not from effort, but from the endless performance of appearing unshaken, intelligent above it all? And here is the most unsettling question of all. If tomorrow your intelligence were stripped away, who would remain? Would there be a self beyond the label? No. Or have you built your entire being on the fragile foundation of being the smart one? These are not questions meant to flatter you. They are meant to pierce you. Because only when the illusion cracks can the truth begin to breathe. So ask yourself, with raw honesty, am I living as a human or merely as an idea of myself? If the disease is the worship of intelligence, then the cure is the death of that idol that you must stop identifying as the smart one. Not because intelligence is worthless, but because no single trait should ever be the foundation of your worth. To tie your value to brilliance is to guarantee fragility. At the first crack, the whole mask shatters. Carl Jung called the path forward. Individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole, is integrating the rejected, hidden, and neglected parts of the self. For the intelligent child grown into the lonely adult, this means reclaiming the pieces sacrificed to maintain the image, the willingness to fail, the humility to begin again, the courage to look foolish, the openness to truly connect. The first step is surrender. You must let go of the desperate need to appear exceptional. You must dare to walk into spaces where you are a beginner, where you stumble, where you are ordinary. This is not weakness. This is liberation, because the more you resist looking imperfect, the smaller your life becomes. But the more you embrace the awkwardness of growth, the larger your life expands. The second step is silence. Stop performing. Stop calculating. Sit with yourself without rushing to solve, without analyzing every flicker of insecurity. Learn to feel without dissecting. Learn to endure discomfort without intellectualizing it away. This is how you begin to nurture emotional muscles that intelligence alone could never develop. The third step is connection, not through superiority, but through vulnerability. Relationships are not built on dazzling others. They are built on shared humanity. Don't need to impress to belong. You need only to be present, to laugh at your mistakes, to admit when you don't know, to let someone see the trembling beneath your confidence. And finally, the step that binds them all: action. Small, imperfect, unglamorous steps forward. Start the project you might abandon. Join the conversation you might fumble. Enter the relationship that might fail, because life will not wait for you to feel flawless. Life begins the moment you are willing to be flawed. This is the paradox of growth, the very thing you fear. Vulnerability is the key to the freedom you crave. The more you cling to being special, the lonelier you become. The more you dare to be human, the more deeply you connect. So the solution is not to think harder, not to out-analyze the pain. The solution is to live through it, to take off the crown, step down from the pedestal, and walk barefoot into the messy, ordinary, miraculous ground of life itself. Because only then do you realize you were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be whole. In the end, the greatest tragedy is not that you have struggled, but that you have lived as though struggle were forbidden. You were never meant to be a statue admired from afar. You were meant to be a living, breathing, soul-scratched, scarred, imperfect, but real. Nietzsche once said, "One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star." Perhaps your chaos, the confusion, the loneliness, the trembling you try so hard to hide, is not proof of your weakness, but the soil from which your real life is meant to grow. Yes, there will be solitude. Yes, there will be fear. Stepping off the pedestal always feels like death, but it is not death, it is rebirth. It is the rediscovery, that you do not need to be the brightest in the room to deserve a place in it. You only need to be human enough to show up. So here is the truth. Intelligence was never your salvation. It was only a mask. Masks, no matter how beautiful, cannot be loved. Only the face beneath them can. Dare to remove it. Dare to let yourself be seen. Dare to walk into the ordinary, the uncertain, the vulnerable, because it is there in the rawness of being human that you will finally find what brilliance alone could never give you: belonging. And perhaps the first time you will feel not like an observer of life, but like a participant. If this video helped you in any way, leave a like and share it with someone who needs to hear this too. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can keep growing together. See you in the next video. Stay strong on your journey. Imagine a child standing in a glass cage. From the outside, everyone sees brilliance, quick answers, high grades, effortless success. Parents smile, teachers nod, classmates whisper admiration. But what no one sees is the cost. The child is trapped in a prison made not of iron, but of expectation. A prison that feels invisible until it is too late. This is the reality of many who were labeled gifted. They learn early that love, attention, and recognition flow most easily when they display intelligence. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, intelligence becomes not just a trait, but an identity. An identity, once crystallized, resists all challenge. As the years pass, this fragile identity begins to collapse under its own weight, because life by nature is difficult. It does not bow to cleverness. It demands persistence, humility, and resilience. Yet the smart child has been conditioned to equate struggle with failure. So when they stumble, as all humans must, it feels like death, feels like betrayal. Think of how this manifests in adulthood. You hesitate to start projects unless you are certain you can finish them flawlessly. You hold back in conversations for fear of sounding foolish. You avoid learning new skills because the thought of being a beginner terrifies you. And while others embrace awkwardness, while they fumble, fall, and eventually master, you remain still. Brilliant, yes, but stagnant. It is like carrying a mirror everywhere you go. A mirror that reflects not who you are, but who you think you must always be. Every decision filtered through the question, will this make me look intelligent or expose me as ordinary? And so, the mirror does not guide you, it consumes you. The irony is brutal. Intelligence was supposed to grant freedom, but instead it narrows your world. You live not to explore, but to preserve. Not to grow, but to defend. You cling to the pedestal you were placed on as a child, terrified that stepping down would mean vanishing into obscurity. And then comes the loneliness. Because connection is born not from perfection, but from shared vulnerability. Bonds are forged in awkward silences, in collective mistakes, in the unpolished corners of human existence. But if you avoid those messy spaces, you also avoid the places where intimacy grows, so you retreat into analysis. You study people instead of joining them. You simulate friendships in your head instead of risking rejection. You become skilled at cognitive empathy, understanding what others feel logically. Yet you remain untouched by the warmth of true emotional resonance. On the surface, you can seem charming, articulate, even magnetic. But beneath it all, there is exhaustion. Because you are not living, you are performing. And here lies the deeper tragedy. When you attempt to use intelligence to solve emotional emptiness, you are wielding the wrong tool. You write arguments to prove to yourself that you are worthy. You analyze your own behaviors until you drown in them. You try to outthink pain, but pain does not yield to logic. Loneliness does not bow to reason. As Schopenhauer once suggested, the intellect is merely the servant of the will, never its master, and the will the deep. Irrational hunger for connection and meaning cannot be pacified by cleverness. The more you chase certainty, the more uncertain you feel. The more you cling to brilliance, the more hollow it becomes. And finally, in desperation, the ego crafts one last defense: arrogance. You convince yourself that you are different, that others cannot understand you. You stand apart because you are too deep for the shallow concerns of the world. But beneath that mask lies not superiority, only fear. Fear of being seen. as ordinary fear of being rejected, fear of facing the possibility that intelligence was never enough to guarantee belonging, and so you hover at the edge of life, endlessly sharp, endlessly capable, yet endlessly isolated. This is the paradox. The brighter the mask, the darker the shadow it hides. So let me ask you, how many opportunities have you abandoned because you were afraid to look foolish? How many friendships have you kept at arm's length because you feared the messinesses of being truly known? How many times have you chosen silence, not because you had nothing to say, but because you were terrified of being wrong? Sit with these questions. Do they not sting? You see, it is easy to tell yourself that you are careful, that you are selective, that you simply prefer solitude. But deep down, is it not also true that you have confused avoidance with wisdom? That your silence is not serenity, but fear?